Call to order the City of Gerald City Council Workshop Tuesday, January 13th at 7 p.m. First item on the agenda is a roll call. We do have one member absent. We'll now have an invocation of Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilwoman Claus.
Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for the opportunity we have to serve the citizens of Gerald. We humbly ask that you continue to grant us with your wisdom in our service. We ask that you bless this joint meeting with planning and zoning, and may our discussions be prosperous for the city we love and call home. Please continue to guide us and watch over our staff, boards, police department, citizens, city council, and emergency services and school district. Lord, may your wisdom and knowledge be reflected in our applications of policies and laws, and may our decisions reflect our integrity and bring honor and glory back to you. For those who are here today, we ask that you continue to protect them in their travels back home. In your precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We don't do the taxes yet.
Okay, next item on the agenda is public comments, and we do not have any.
No, sir.
Okay, agenda item 3 is going to be training and presentation by staff. 3.1, we're going to have a presentation by the city manager on city council roles and authority.
Good evening, council, mayor, and PNC members. Again, being here, if I sound nervous, it's because I am, and it's true. It's been 2 years, but I'm not a public speaker. I would like to start the introducing some of my staff members. Some of them you might never interact with them, have never interacted with them, and I just want them to get to know you and you to know them. So I'm going to allow them to stand up, introduce themselves, and tell what they do for the city.
Forrest Williams, City Planner for Development Services.
Stephen Pistrowski, Water and Wastewater Superintendent.
Lane Peace, Public Works Operations Manager.
Jim McLean, your new chief.
My name is Naya Santana, and I'm in finance.
As you see, some of the vacancies we had in the past have been filled, and we still actively searching to fill the other vacancies that we have with the city. To start, I would like to start with what is a council manager form of government. And as a general law city, a council manager form is designed to separate policy leadership from day-to-day administration. On the general law, on the general law city, we can do only what the state allows. If we do ever turn into home rule, then we can do whatever the state has not prohibited. The goal of this presentation is to support council members, provide them understanding of responsibilities, decision-making authority, how the organization functions, and proper staff interaction. Under Texas law, council is a government body. Authority is exercised collectively through motions, ordinances, and resolutions. Something that I did research, that I want to expand is the difference between an ordinance and a resolution, and it boils down to an ordinance is the law of the city, and it's meant to be permanent. A resolution is a formal action or an amendment to an ordinance, and it's not meant to be a law. Sometimes we present you with an ordinance, and sometimes we present you with a resolution. Council sets policy directions, adopt the budget, and establish city goals. Council does not manage the staff directly or the daily operations. Land use, tax rates, and ordinances adoption falls under the city council. The city manager executes council's policy and manages the regular staff and daily activities of the city. The next slide, I'm going to talk about the mayor and his roles. The mayor presides over the council meetings and helps guide discussions. He serves as the chief executive officer for ceremonies and his public face of the city. Mayor represents the city in regional and intergovernmental matters. He plays a key coordinating role during emergencies, and when authorized, he can appoint board and commission members. He works with the council and the city manager in conjunction. The mayor does not direct the staff either, oversees the council decisions. The staff and daily operations, again, rest on the city manager's shoulders. And every slide, and I should mention at the beginning, every slide at the end is showing the actual reference on the codes and regulations that we have to obey by as a city. My favorite part about me. The city manager. The city manager is an appointed position and serves to the council. Execute council policies and manage daily operations and staff. And the staff that the manager directs is the non-appointed staff. Acts as the chief administrative officer. That means that he has the right to hire, fire non-appointed staff, daily operations, and carry out council policies and directions. City manager oversees all departments and non-appointed staff. He prepares the annual budget for council review and approval. Ensures compliance with the laws, ordinance, and best practices, and he's a centralized operational accountability. We're going to show a flow chart on that portion, but basically it's you as a council members will receive the concern from the residents, and you filter that directly to the city manager. If the city manager has an answer, he will respond to you. If the city manager does not have an answer, then he will seek under his staff, who will be the appropriate department to get that answer, and then forward it back to you. How you guys communicate that to the resident, that's up to you. You direct the staff. If you want to answer it directly, you can go ahead, or you can direct me to be the one responding to that resident directly on your behalf. Also, the city manager provides council with objective analysis, pros, cons, and long-term impact. And it's a recommendation from the staff point of view. It supports and executes council decisions. And just a little bit on my background, I'm sure some of you know, some of you might have done. I served with the United States Coast Guard, and I'm a retired veteran. After my retirement, I found out that retirement was good, but not that good. So I went back to college and got my bachelor's degree in civil engineer back in 2014. As you can tell, I speak Spanish. I'm licensed in the state of Texas. And when I was going to college, I was working in construction, and I managed to get up to general foreman. So I was running a construction project by myself at the time. Soon after I got out of college, moved to Texas, and my first jobs in Texas were road design engineer, then roadway construction inspector, then traffic and transportation engineer, which I did for a little bit over 5 years in Georgetown. And moved to the city jail. They offered me an opportunity to excel my career. And since I've been the city engineer, director of development service, interim city manager, and then now appointed city manager for the city. So my emphasis since I was appointed as a city manager is a long-term stewardship and not a short-term decision making. Commitment to serve this community for the long period. Improve efficiency and consistency. Align staff roles with strength and operational needs. Modernize procedures and ensure compliance and transparency, and build redundancy to reduce risk and burnout. It is important to have redundancy. Anything can happen to any of us, and without redundancy, the city can be at risk or come to a stall. I think we already almost faced that once. I don't want that to happen, regardless if I'm the head of the table or I'm not. And again, government policy. Why we have government policy and how do we work? Well, the government's policy provides us with guidance and how city council, mayor, and management and the staff interact with the public. ensures governance, transparency, legal compliance, and consistent communication, and also align us with the Texas Local Government Code and the Texas Municipal League as a best practices. Going back a little bit into centralized operational accountability, that flow chart is what I was referring to. Mayor and council members receive concerns from the public. And we all know we want to attend those concerns in a timely manner. Mayor and council will reach out to the city manager and express what the concerns are, and the city manager in turn either have an answer or will seek within the staff which department would be the appropriate to provide that answer. Once that answer is seek, it will respond back to you with a response, and you can direct me either to let you answer that question to the resident directly, or you can direct me to reach out to that resident on your behalf. This chart here, it represents how the organization presently is built. You have the residents, city council, you have the city manager, city attorney, city judge, city prosecutor. We have a finance department, now we have a finance manager, Naila Santana, development service, which underneath we have the city planner, permitting and inspections. We have public works, for development service, we have Yvonne Spell as the director of the department. Public works is divided between facilities, street, parks, and drainage. Basically, anything above the water line is public works. And for that, we have our operations manager, Lane Peace. City Secretary, Diane, assisted by Christy Herring, which is the assistant city secretary. She also runs human resource and accounts and utility billing. Members that are not present here, accounts payable is owned by Debbie. Sorry, I always mispronounce her last name, Debbie Tyner. Thank you. Water and wastewater, we're trying to build a department where we have Stephen Pujowski, our water and wastewater operations manager. And then we have police and code enforcement, and now we have a new chief, Jim McLean. For redundancy, my goal is by 2028 or sooner, get to this form of government, of structure too. Where the residents, again, city council, you have the city attorney, city judge, city secretary, and her assistant city secretary, city prosecutor, an assistant city manager, human resource person, dedicated human resource staff. Then build the finance department with accounts payable, municipal court, and utility billing. Anything that involves money should be under that umbrella. Development service will be the city planner, permitting and inspections. Public works will be the same, still the same, facilities, streets, park, and drainage. Public utilities, water and wastewater, that's to build our own water and wastewater department. The purpose is, as we build Stephen Pujowski's department, we start phasing out the subcontractor Crossroad, which at one point, we're probably gonna be paying about the same between our department and Crossroad, but by the following year, we should be eliminating Crossroad completely and then running our own department with no problems. That's gonna take some time, but that's the goal, to start phasing out some of the contracts and seeing more revenues getting into the city bank. Public safety, that will be the PD and encompass code enforcement and emergency management. And like I said, that would be my goal, no later than 2028. If I can get approached that sooner, that would be awesome for the city. That will ensure redundancy and continuity. So one of us go on vacation, there will be somebody equally knowledgeable to continue running the city on the behalf of the absence of any of us. Any immediate questions?
Are we gonna get a code enforcer anytime soon?
Code
I've
enforcement,
had so many people say I need to go look at this house and look at this. And
I know which house you're talking about, and I'm gonna give you good news. Good, not the good news.
How do you know I
bad
haven't even
news.
mentioned
That
it?
good news, that good news. Code enforcement, we pulled the application because lately legislation changed and they're making some requirements that we did not have in the application. That's been worked out between the chief and our financial manager. We're working on having a good description for what we need for code enforcement. If the house you're referring is the same house that we all been talking about, PD already visit with the resident. We gave him already a warning. He has a timeline to meet. He hasn't met a timeline. And I think there's some other aspects with that resident that I cannot discuss right now. But we're building now, we're effectively building a case to proceed and continue with the house.
We're probably not talking about the same one because I haven't heard anything, but it's good. I'm glad we're on something. I'm glad we're on to something.
We're moving forward. I mean,
Yeah.
we're coming from a hard time. And one saying we got stoned twice before we see the light. I think we have one minor storm to go past, and then we're gonna start seeing the city that you all envision for yourself.
Okay.
With that, if no questions, I'm gonna pass the mic to my finance manager. She would like to give you some news of yours.
This is gonna be 3.2. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, wait. But while she's on that, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Naya Santana. I have about 23 and a half, some will make 24 years in some form of government and finance, from federal, state to county to coming from a municipality to you guys. And then I also have an MPA in public administration and finance. So it's a brief history. And what I would like to go over today with you guys is what is the Finance Department, what is our roles, responsibilities, and just really accountability. Okay, so if you hit the first slide, what is the purpose? Why do you guys have finance? It's to ensure that we have financial stewardship for city resources, funds, maintaining accurate and reliable financial records, and we're also in compliance with GAAP. And then, of course, providing financial transparency to our public, council, city manager, departments, and having that oversight. All right, responsibilities. What in the world do we do? So, one key component, if you'll look at the next two slides, what I did is I broke it down by pretty much everything that encumbers finance. And the main thing is we monitor those revenues and expenditures, not to exceed budgetary statutes that council puts in place. So we don't want those department heads getting down to the summer and then there's no funds. So it's monitored monthly, quarterly, and forward. Those internal controls also are staying in compliance with Texas Local Government Code and as well as GAAP. And then the main key point is reporting any budget inconsistencies directly to the city manager and the governing body, so that you're aware of any errors before they become snowballs. And then support financial accountability and sound management of our public funds. And working really closely with our department heads. I've already set up quite a bit of meetings, so we're monitoring the budget, needs, and forecasting the future, what that's gonna look like. If we look at accounting and financial reporting, right now, our finance team monitors the general ledger and the financial systems in accordance with GAAP, Texas Local Government Code, and all the statutory requirements. And as you guys know, the Senate came and put a lot of Senate bills out, so instead of going for $50,000 per bid, now it's $100,000. So it's really capturing everything that's changed, monitoring state laws, as well as being in compliance for the city. And ensuring accurate and timely recording of all financial transactions in all city departments. So everything funnels to finance at some point. So monitoring that each department is on track for their budget and on track for their spending and expenditures that may come abroad. Prepare those financial reports, including our council quarterly report and financial statements. And then providing our audit and working closely with our auditors. On Thursday, we actually have auditors coming on site, so we'll be, I'm sure, quite busy, but the law gave us 180 days from the close of the fiscal year, so March 29th, we've got to have that audit completed. I'm not expecting any hiccups, it should be smooth. The finance team has been very gracious in making sure that we have everything accounted for. So, the end of the week, we're going to be this last week we've been very busy.
Revenue and cash management. Obviously, cash will come into the city. The finance department is responsible for billing, collections, all cash handling, and being in compliance with all those internal controls. The main concern that we'll be working towards is maintaining segregation of duties. We don't have one person signing, checking the budget, and doing cash receipts. Texas local government code has strict laws that we should have segregation of duties. So we have a team that is expanding, and that's where we will be working to. And then the main focus with our cash managers is making sure that we have sufficient cash flow. That way, what's coming in is going out, accounted for, daily ledgers, monthly review, and then of course, quarterly, and everybody's favorite, our budget reviews. The next thing I'd like to just touch is cultivating those relationships with our banking partners, to our bonds, to Eagle Bank up the street. So making sure that those are positive relationships, and we're also putting the city in a good light, stewarding those relationships. Internal controls and risk management. By establishing and maintaining those internal controls and safeguards, we're protecting the city's asset. We are monitoring things before they get out of hand. We're monitoring any spam fraud that is gonna come out of sending in an email and clicking this link. That's one thing that we wanna make sure that we're very protective of public funds. And then monitoring financial risk and ensure compliance, that it's in policy and procedure moving forward. However, when those incidents come where there may be a concern, we're gonna develop a corrective action to make sure that there's no audit findings, and when there are, we can address them and address any deficiencies as quick as possible within a timely manner. Debt and cash management. Many of our finance teams, they do collect cash payments for our community and our residents. And so we'll be monitoring that, and then of course safeguarding those public funds for strategic investments moving forward. The debt management will be administering debt obligations, responsible for maintaining financial stability, and of course putting the city's credit at a top tier high standard, that everything is encumbered correctly. Compliance and transparency. Adhering to that Texas local government code, it is, I call it the Bible. It guides us to everything we need to do. I think I look at it about 10 times a day. It's got about 200 tabs in there. Everything has a reference that we can look back to, especially when we're doing anything with public funds. Transparency, responding promptly to audits, open records requests, and any public inquiries. There is certain deadlines that we do have to adhere by, and we also make sure our financials are transparent to our public. As I always say, it's the residents' money, we're just stewards of it. So make sure that we're in compliance with that. And then of course, promoting accountability and transparency across all city operations. I think all my departments said they're tired of meeting me at this point. But we've got to make sure we know what's going on in every department, so those votes balance at the end of the day. So that's been really a great thing. So the commitment, with all this responsibility, what do we do with it? At the bottom line, I was trying to really think of a word. The one thing I thought of was commitment. We have a commitment for public funds. We have a commitment to the residents, community, our stakeholders, and our council that holds our feet to the fire. So prioritizing compliance, transparency, and using that to safeguard our public trust, maintaining and keeping all city operations accountable and trustworthy, again, stewarding those relationships so we are presenting a positive look for the city of Durham. And then assurance that we are compliant, accountable, and of course reinforcing that public trust that the funds are in their hands. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's me, guys. I'm down the hall here.
So in your binders, I put the last two out of order. I apologize. If you flip to the last blue page, that's gonna be development services, and we're gonna start. So it should have some maroon color slides at the very front.
Okay. So now we're on the 3.3. Development services.
Hang on, man, I'll let we need it.
Probably the longest one.
Yeah, we're in competition with Christina
Where is the last one?
We're there.
All right, so, Mayor and Council, P and Z, I'm gonna go over some of the Development Services Department's duties, responsibilities, and then how it all plays into what y'all do in, the policymaking, space. So, we're gonna talk about the bylaws, meeting procedures, and then we're gonna talk about master planning, just general procedures, and then development process. So this is the overall kind of development services review team. So it's a combination of internal and then third-party members that participate in this process. So obviously you have staff with the city manager, Jorge, and then Yvonne and Steven, and then myself, and then Ashlyn, our permit tech. And then we have MRB and KPA that do third-party engineering and plan review services. And then Bureau Veritas does building inspections and plan review for building permits. And then we have coordination with other reviewers, such as the World Code ESD number 5, with TxDOT, with the Gerald Schwartner Water Supply Corporation, the electric company, so Encore, Bartlett Electric Co-op, and then obviously Williamson County. So it takes a whole bunch of people to coordinate all together and make sure that developments are in an orderly fashion and following all the codes and requirements set forth by the city, but then also by the state and the county. So required trainings, all of y'all are mandated to participate in the Open Meetings Act and the Public Information Act training, and there's a link that you can go to if you haven't done that training. And so usually it's within 90 days of the appointment of either commissioners or council. And then acronyms. So there's a lot of acronyms that we use in development services. So this is just kind of a list that you can reference back to when you're looking at different development applications that we bring forward to y'all. So then we'll go into Planning and Zoning Commission bylaws. So membership and organization. Obviously, we did a update of the bylaws for P&Z back in August of this past year, so this should kind of just be a little refresher. I'm not going to go through every single detail, but essentially we have 5 members on P&Z, 3 must be registered voters within the city limits, and then 2 members must be within the ETJ or within 2 miles of the ETJ. And have to have 6 months of residency within the city or ETJ. And then members are appointed by the mayor and council, and terms are 2 years, and we did staggered. So we have 1 vacancy right now, and then the other 3 commissioners were reappointed last week. We also the terms end December 31st, and then vacancies are filled by the council for the remainder of an unexpired term. And then we are trying to get alternate members to be on P&Z, so that way, in the event there's an absence or a vacancy, we have somebody that can already be in the know of what's going on, so they can just kind of step in and fill that place. So that's something that we are hoping we'll get some more applications to bring back forward to y'all to review that. And then we have members, they elect a chair, a vice chair, and then a secretary within the commission. And then the vice chair will fulfill duties of the chair whenever that person is absent. And let's see, attendance. So members must be in good standing and attend at least 3 meetings in order to stay in good standing as far as attending meetings and being participating. Do you have anything else to add? Okay, so roles. So the commission serves as an advisory body to the council and operates under the city ordinances. So members should attend all meetings. If you miss 3 consecutive meetings, that would cause for not being in good standing and could be automatic removal. And then advance notice is expected to the chair or the vice chair, and then staff included in that. Members must recuse themselves from discussion or voting if they have or believe they have a conflict of interest, which we'll go into a little bit later. And then Open Meetings Act must comply with local government code. And then meeting and scheduling, so most of the meetings need to be within 15, so when an item comes to P&Z, we usually have about 15 days to get that item to council for final approval after they make the recommendation. And then we have a requirement for a quorum of 3 members present. And then just general agenda procedures and making sure that we get the agendas out in a timely manner, which is 3 business days before the meeting per local government code. And then duties and powers. So P&Z's job is to act in the best interest of the community, not any individual applicant, to make recommendations on any development proposals that come forward. Then prepare and update plans and maps according to different elements of the land use or the zoning.
You have that
I think
screen.
you slipped us.
Oh, sorry.
You're good.
Okay.
I'm doing like 2 different ones. Okay. And so basically like following the comprehensive plan and the visionary documents that have been set in place by the governing body, and then making sure that any development is falling in line with that, plus whatever the ordinances are in place at the time of that submittal. So staff will vet all of those proposals and applications and then bring that to P&Z for them to make a recommendation. This staff is not going to bring forward anything that does not follow the guidelines that are set forth in the ordinances. We're going to make sure that whatever is being brought forward is following the city's ordinances that are in place at that time. Obviously, there's going to be things that are out of our control at certain points, just because development happens faster than we can make updates, it seems like. But if we see things that need to be updated in our ordinances, or there's things that y'all feel need to be updated, then let us know so that way we can make a list and start bringing forward regular updates for all of our ordinances and codes that we have adopted. This is a brief table that kind of helps explain what y'all's roles are in development reviews. So the X is going to be the final review authority, the O is going to be initial review or recommending authority, and then the A is an advisory review. So majority of the applications are either going to be approved by the council or approved by staff, and then with P&Z recommending something. So there's 2 slides with all that. And if you have questions, obviously stop me. But we're going to go into meeting procedures. So just some general reminders as we have meetings, and some kind of expectations that we are needing to adhere to. So obviously staff puts a lot of effort and time into everything that we're doing, so we ask that you will read and study the packets prior to the meeting, so that way we can all kind of be up to the same page on the application. And if you have questions, obviously reach out to us, and we can set up a meeting prior to the meeting to make sure that you have more details or information if you need that. And then visit each case site. So you're welcome to like Google it. You can go to Google Maps. Street View is awesome because you can look back in time and see what was there before. So that's a good way to look at it. Don't access private property unless they give you permission, but that just having it on the agenda does not mean that you have access to go to that property. So you can look at it from the road. And then obviously when if it's public hearing, tell people in the public if they have concerns or comments, they can submit those, but if they come to the meeting, it's kind of their voice that is able to be heard at that time. So it's giving them a chance to make sure that their I guess opposition, or if they're for it, is being heard. And then making sure that y'all are up to date with the most recent codes and ordinances that we have in place or any plans that we have adopted. We'll try to make sure that we notify you of anything that's changing. Obviously, y'all are gonna approve those items, but if there's something that comes up with the state law that y'all aren't aware about, we're gonna try to do a better job of informing y'all of those items that come up. And then report any conflicts of interest. So before a meeting, we definitely want y'all to let us know, so that way you can fill out the conflict of interest form, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I guess the goal is to be fair, be honest, be ethical, and be objective. Let's see, agendas and staff reports. So 3 business days before the meeting is when the agendas will be posted or sent out to y'all. That is the new local government code requirement. State law changed that this past year from 72 hours. And so all of these items are going to kind of be usual items that you'll see in our staff reports. I think most of y'all have kind of gotten familiar with that already. Conflict of interest. So this goes into a little more detail. We don't currently have a conflict of interest ethics or a local ethics policy. So we're going to rely on the local government code, chapter 171. And so basically this will cover any council members or board or commission members. And basically you're going to be subject to that local government code chapter and the Open Meetings Act, Public Information Act. What constitutes a conflict of interest is going to be any substantial interest in a business entity or real property, and then the interest must be connected to a matter before the body, so including ownership or financial interest, employment or business relations, and then close family relations. So those are kind of things to be keeping in mind as you review cases. Like I said, if you do think that you have a conflict of interest, let us know so that way we can get you that form to complete. Diane, her office has that form available, and then we'll have to disclose that conflict publicly at the meeting, and then you would abstain from the discussion and voting when required. Sorry, that slide. And so this is going to be overseen by the Texas Ethics Commission, and so they'll oversee any elections and ethic matters, and then anything that does not govern the day-to-day conflicts for local land use decisions. So this kind of just best practices to keep in mind. Legal, do you have anything to add on that?
Basically, just quickly on chapter 171 is your legal conflict of interest. That's really what can get you into legal trouble. And so substantial interest is defined in there as to what percentage of a business or what value, what minimum fair market value of an ownership interest. If you ever have questions, reach out to staff or reach out to me if you think so. And then kind of like what Forrest said, sometimes your best practices, even if it's not a true legal conflict, sometimes the appearance of a conflict, sometimes better just to abstain from that action. So err on the side of caution. Like I said, your legal conflicts are really the ones that you need to be most aware of. And we could go into more detail at a later date if y'all ever have questions on that. But so just be aware of chapter 171 of the local government code is very important. And that goes for P&Z too. It's not just council, it's all local public officials.
So public hearing procedures, this is a kind of proposal of how we would like to proceed with public hearing procedures. Currently, the public hearings are listed at kind of the beginning of the meeting, and then it'll have the item later on in the agenda. But a lot of cities do it this way to make it to where staff will make the presentation with that agenda item, and then the chair or the mayor would invite the applicant to come forward. And then from there, we would ask questions and then go into the public hearing. So that way, when the public comes up and starts asking their questions, there's a baseline set for what that project consists of. So hopefully we may have answered some of those questions that they might have already wanted to ask. And then after that, we can clarify and have any follow-up, and then motions can be made after that. Does that sound better, worse? Any
Same.
objection? Same? Okay.
So currently, we bring the public up to ask their questions before we give our presentation, and we think that that might cause a little bit of confusion. We think that it may help if we give our presentation first to maybe get some of that data and information out there before they come up to ask questions, maybe helps quell some of those concerns or questions that they might have.
So motion, deliberations, and votes. So motions are made and seconded by, the members of the body, so either P and Z or council. The chair should not make a motion. Deliberation, so the chair will ask for comments from the commission, or the mayor will ask comments from the council, and deliberate on that motion, and then the chair may choose to structure comments so that they move across the dais, either left to right, so kind of, the chair has the authority to make sure that the meeting or the discussion is moving in a particular direction across the dais. And then the vote is taken, so the chair can clearly state who made the motion, and then we'll ask for a vote from each commissioner. So we've also kind of talked, it may be better that during the motions, if you can state your name, or if staff does a roll call, so then that way it's clear for the record. You got anything to add on that?
No, so it'd be, Commissioner Stowe makes a motion to approve the request, or, Alderwoman Fitzner makes a motion to disapprove the request, and then what we would ask is that as we go, instead of ayes and nays, because it's kind of hard to go back and listen to audio to see who voted yes or no. If we could do, Alderman Cleveland votes yes, Alderman Allen says no, kind of go through roll call like that, just so we have it clear on audio, so that when we have to go back for minutes, stuff like that, that it's just easier to make note of who said what.
Does it sound good?
And then same
So when we make the motion, we need to say our name and then make the motion? Is that what I'm
Because
getting?
it's on audio, I know that we do take video, but that's not our video, so what we have on file, like our actual file is audio, so it's kind of hard sometimes to listen to audio and figure out who it was that was speaking.
Where we at on having our own camera system? That's one of the things we discussed.
We still haven't figured out how to work out the system we have. We still need like before.
So then we go to commission action. So then this would be where most of the cases that come forward to the P and Z will be making a recommendation to council. So approve, conditional approve, denial, or table to continue action in another meeting. And then on some cases, the commission may make a recommendation to council to modify the approval with the conditions. So like if it's a planned unit development or a special use
Special use
district.
permit,
Special use
be
permit.
conditional special.
Yeah. And then the development agreement. And subdivision plats and site development plans and other subdivision applications should be approved unless the commission can point to a specific UDC requirement where the application is not compliant. So we'll go over that in a future slide talking about the local government code requirements on conditional approvals. So, questions to the applicant. So these are kind of some general appropriate questions to ask, inappropriate questions to ask, just so that way you know kind of what you can and can't necessarily inquire about. So more of the appropriate ones are going to be like land use impact, compatibility, infrastructure, consistency with the comprehensive plan, consistency with adjacent zoning, and then connectivity to streets or other subdivisions. Inappropriate questions would be like forms of ownership or occupancy tenure, financial status of the applicant or the tenants, or singling out a particular use if the zoning district allows for multiple uses. So master planning, this is a fitting picture because we are working on the downtown master plan. So what's the difference? There's master planning and then there's long range planning. So master planning is a big picture direction. It establishes the city's long-term vision and goals, and then it helps guide where and how growth. My slide is backwards, so flip those. The top heading is backwards. So we're talking about long-range planning first. Big picture establishes long-term vision and goals, guides where and how growth should occur, coordinates land use, infrastructure, transportation, utilities, and it provides policy direction for zoning, capital investments, and development review. So these are gonna be the overall guiding documents that the city uses. For master planning, this is gonna be like implementation and coordination, so translate the vision into more actionable policies and projects. So aligning with the capital improvements plan, utility plans, transportation, and then looking at how it can help bring everything together from each of these little aspects of plans and then create that big picture guiding document. So all the plans should point in the same direction, which is what this next slide kind of shows you. So all of those little squares are going to be your master plans, and then they all feed into the comprehensive plan. So right now, staff is actively working on the majority of these master plans, and most of them are going to be completed within the next year or 2 years. The one that we don't have set in stone yet is going to be the capital improvement plan. That one's still TBD. And then the comprehensive plan. So once we get all of these master plans developed and created, then we're going to go into a comprehensive planning process to bring all of those documents together and make one big vision and goal for the city. So this is kind of the overall, I guess, planning world and how we try to help everybody be on a synchronized kind of same boat, rowing in the same direction. So why strategic planning matters? It creates clear expectations for developers. It reduces reliance on development agreements or case-by-case negotiations. It gives us clear city decisions that can be made and defensible. And then it ensures infrastructure and keeps up with kind of the pace of growth. For the most part, we can only go as fast as we can, but and then it supports fair, consistent application of the regulations. So looking at our planning areas, so this is going to be our future land use map. This is going to include like city limits, ETJ, water and sewer CCN. So when we look at planning, like we're looking at all of these areas around the city as well as within the city. The future land use plan is going to guide where and how growth should occur, and then identify appropriate land patterns that support infrastructure, services, and long-term goals. And then zoning, this is our zoning map and then our zoning districts. So all of these districts, except the special districts at the bottom, are currently in place. Those special districts are a reserve for future ordinances to be created. But essentially, all of these zoning districts is what council has kind of set in place prior, based on the, I guess, 2021 comprehensive plan. So as we develop a new comprehensive plan, these may change and adjust based on the changes to the future land use map that come up from that planning effort. Development process. I'll stop. Do you have any questions, comments? No. So this is a high-level overview of the development process. This is going to include entitlements, subdivision, regulations, site development, and then the building permits. So when we look at a new application that comes in, we're going to have kind of these 3 requirements at the beginning that need to be met. So the applicant is going to have a pre-development meeting with staff to make sure that they get all of their initial questions answered before they do any kind of engineering or start doing any kind of infrastructure planning. Because obviously that costs a lot of time and money, so we want to make sure that we're giving them the most information up front that we can. And then we also are going to make them go through a utility feasibility study with KPA. So our third party, they are set up to handle those, and so an applicant submits the application for the utility feasibility study, and they will give us the estimated number of LUEs that they're expecting, and then we will get KPA to do their analysis to determine any off-site improvements that need to be made, any, I guess, regional situations that come up from a infrastructure standpoint. So if there's regional needs that need to be met as far as that development goes, and then looking at anything from like a more long-range perspective of are we able to serve them with water, serve them with sewer capacity, do we have the ability to handle that? And then traffic impact analysis. So every development is now required to complete a traffic impact analysis. So this is gonna help us make improvements on our roadways so that we're not getting behind on improving the roadways with the development. So a lot of times roads don't get improved until 20 or 30 years after all of the development comes in. We're gonna try to be more proactive in making sure that they're making the necessary improvements on the front end, so that way it's not a burden on the city and taxpayers later on.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Traffic impact analysis.
Yeah.
So what is like the, I'll just say whatever subdivision may be coming in. When they do that type of analysis, what is the footprint, like the area? Do they go outside of, like, not just the entrance and the exit to the subdivision, do they account for a wider area than that? Or is it just right there where they're building, let's say a subdivision, just for?
It's usually
It
like
is.
where they're building a subdivision and it's like their trip count. It's
But
showing how much
it's a-
traffic
it's
they're
a-
going to increase upon the public roadway from their development.
From that specific
From that
spot
specific
only,
site.
not necessarily people coming to the light
It's,
first.
it's a little bit of combination. You gotta account for the traffic, the present traffic on either direction, either extreme of the development. And then you account how much that development traffic is gonna impact the area. And then based on it, that's when you determine the amount of improvement that is required to alleviate that impact. If it makes sense. We just don't limit, the traffic impact analysis don't only see the entrance of the development. Just to give you a linear example. You have a stoplight west, you have a stoplight east. We account for that traffic, and then we analyze that development, how it's gonna impact that traffic over there. And then we decide how the extent of the improvements to maintain the flow of traffic.
So it's entirely possible that where there's not necessarily a left or right turn lane or something.
It won't
At the
depend,
intersection,
yeah, it will all
it may
depend.
not be right there in front of that subdivision. Cause that's what I'm starting to see out there in the roads out there, things we can help with.
Like decel lanes to get into
Yes.
there without impacting this.
Yes.
Or acceleration lanes when you're coming out of one before you get on.
Yes, and just, all of that.
Yeah, those lanes are mostly determined for how many turning movements you have, how many left turns you have, how many right turns you have. If you have an immense amount that would create a long queue, yes, you want a diesel lane to alleviate people turning and the people going through can pass without problem. But if the amount of turning movement is not significant, then there's no justification to have a diesel acceleration lane. However, because of the new changes we did in the traffic impact analysis regulation for the city, it opens the table for the city. If we want, we cannot force them, but we can ask for the development to add it. But that would be something that we have to negotiate.
Right, which is fine, just, the main thing is the circle of area, that it's not just limited to right at the subdivision that might be impacted. Because those cars are coming from everywhere, so you can't just look at just what's coming right there at the subdivision, so that's just what I wanted to make sure of, that's all.
Got a question, if you're through.
Yeah, go.
What are we doing to make sure that in the past, we've had some things come before us that we didn't really have if our opinion didn't amount to anything, we had to do it. The law said we had to because the application was made. And you had 30 days for us to hear it. Is there anything being done, if something happens and we don't, for whatever reason, we don't get to hear it within that 30-day period, are we mandated? Or is there a way to cover it where we're not mandated to approve it? And the other thing is, when these developers come to us, that they come with all their paperwork for that site. Not a big picture perfect thing from a corporate office in Washington DC. Something that's gonna happen here in Gerald proper. Because we have had things brought to us that was not really what was gonna be put there. So, does that make sense? I mean, I'm asking, both of you, because y'all are,
Yes.
but I don't wanna, we've been caught in that position a
So
couple of times.
there is a limitation on plats and what y'all's authority is with those. But that's where the zoning comes into play on the front end. So if there's particular things that y'all don't want or y'all want, then that needs to be communicated in the land use plan and the zoning. So that way, that is something that you have more discretion over, whereas the plat, you don't really have any discretion over because it has to follow whatever the code is at that time.
But a lot of those plats were presented, or verbally, because they didn't have
Oh, you're
things put
saying you
together.
didn't even get to see the plat?
We didn't get to see anything
Yeah,
other
so-
than talk, and it was, because it was 30 days, we didn't really have any choice or any say in it, we were just rubber stamping, and I don't want to waste my time rubber stamping.
No, I would definitely make sure that they have all the requirements met and then bring that forward.
Before they ever come.
Yeah.
Yes, so we can declare them administratively complete or not administratively complete prior to even presenting to P and Z. So if they don't give us a layout with their application, then that would not be an administratively complete application, and we could tell them, we're denying this.
Okay, so it would never get that,
It would never get to you.
that's what I'm.
Yeah. Now, when it does come to you, we have 30 days, so once
Yeah.
we declare it administratively complete, we have 30 days to get it in front of the planning and zoning body, and either 15 or 30 days to get it in front of city council. So some of those, they are gonna have very tight timelines, but yes, if they don't submit a complete package, then we can tell them this is not complete, we're denying it at an administrative level.
Okay, good deal. Because that's, we've had a number of things showed up.
Yes.
Back to the traffic impact analysis. Who dictates what time of the year they do that? I know there's a big difference, probably 40% drop off in the summer when school's not in.
Traffic impact analysis has to be done during normal traffic hours. And what that means is, cannot be weekends, Fridays, or Mondays. Have to be when school is in session, because you wanna capture the true traffic. So summer and winter, summer and holidays are not counting holidays, days,
Right.
Christmas vacations, those days you're not allowed to make a traffic count. It has to be during normal business hours, full traffic on, school in session, you wanna capture everything. The windows for those analyses are really small. It's normally, you give a month when the class start to the traffic to normalize, so that brings you back to September. By November, we start in holidays, so that the window is shut down. You don't see another window until February, and by March, you start closing the window again, and that's it.
Makes sense.
So.
We don't wanna be caught, talking about the traffic, we don't wanna be caught with a Highway 29 going through like Georgetown. It's so crowded, you can't get up and down that road.
And I think that's what we're trying to work
We don't
on.
need that, I
with
mean,
the-
our roads need to be big enough to handle.
With the master transportation plan and then with the Williamson County transportation plan, I think that those are gonna be the two things that are gonna help us be ahead of that going forward. Now, obviously, the subdivisions that are already here, we're just gonna have to make do and try to figure out kind of a best way to get around that, but, or deal with it for now, but, ultimately, like, those roadway width requirements are gonna be part of those plans to make sure that whatever development comes in, that they're dedicating enough roadway so that we have room to expand in the future.
There was, at one time, there was a master plan for roads around Gerald,
Yes.
305, for instance.
Yeah.
One of the interesting, that, and the other way is going both ways.
Before we move, one point I want to clarify is that master plans are living, breathing documents. If I conduct a master plan today, I need to revisit that maybe 2-3 years down the road.
Yes.
If I get a master plan and don't revisit it, then it's as good as not having one.
I know.
I'm not just,
You don't
that,
have to
that
clarify.
every, you're gonna see master plans, it's not gonna be a one-time presentation, you're gonna see this.
You gotta upgrade it regularly, revisit it every year.
Alright, so development, agreements, so this is gonna be part of the development process, so development agreements and utility service agreements. The big thing with these is development agreements are negotiated contracts between the city and the property owner, and then it sets expectations for land use, infrastructure, annexation terms. Obviously, there's a whole bunch more in that goes into it, but prior to annexation laws changing in 2023, this was kind of the way that you had more control over new development. Now with that law being changed for annexations, you really have lost that ability. They can basically come in to the city, or they can get annexed and you still have to provide them services and you still have to do all the things, even if they're not annexed. So there's a lot of limitations there now, so that development agreement tool is not really as useful as it once was, just because of how state law has changed. And then utility service agreements is going to be a way to ensure water and wastewater capacity for a project. So basically, whatever that feasibility study that they complete at the beginning of their application process, whatever that LUE amount that they're being allocated, that's where we could put that into the agreement. So then they are basically reserving the amount of LUEs that they need for their project. So then that way we can help keep track of all of the developments that are coming in and then how much the city is committing to serving for water and wastewater capacity.
So who uses the development?
Who uses the development agreement?
Because at some point in one of our meetings recently, we were told that they don't have to have a development agreement.
Correct.
So who uses them and why would they?
They were historically used when cities were still allowed to do involuntary annexation. When me as a property owner having like 100 acres said, I don't want you to annex me and I will enter into an agreement to not develop my land as long as you do not annex me for say 25 to 20 years. That's historically what development agreements were intended for. When annexation law changed in 2017, 2019, you just won't see development agreements that often anymore because cities don't have the authority to do involuntary annexations like that anymore. It's mainly voluntary annexations. So now me as a property owner saying, I want to come into the city under a voluntary application. Yeah.
But we have seen one recently, so why did they choose to do that?
That was what was presented to them. That was historically what development services had used. And it's not a requirement, that's just how it was presented to them. So they requested to transition to the utility services arena. Yeah.
I will also say, coming from a place that has never done development agreements to here, it makes it very confusing for staff and I'm sure anybody from public perspective, just because of the convolutedness of a development agreement. I mean, you have your own codes and ordinances set in place, so then adding on a separate agreement that has other details and items outlined in there that you're agreeing to. So like when staff has to go back and research and figure out what is allowed in that development, what's not allowed, or what we agreed to in the past, like it adds a whole bunch of extra steps for staff and then council and P&Z to have to deal with and negotiate with. So it is a lot more difficult, I think, to have a development agreement where, given that state law has changed, I mean, you kind of have the zoning in place and you have your land use, so like use those to the best of your ability and make sure that you're getting the, I guess, the most bang for your buck out of what you have put into your plans. So being more thorough in your future plans and trying to think more, I guess, aspirational in your plans is going to kind of be the key thing going forward, because I don't think state law is going to go back and change that to where it'll be something that is going to be a tool used for the future. So just, I guess, outsider perspective. So voluntary annexations, so in, Senate Bill 6, House Bill 347 in 2017, this is when, cities were no longer allowed to do involuntary annexations. So we could just go out and land grab basically and bring, properties into the city. So now, it has to be a voluntary request from the property owner, which is what the problem was talking about. And then in 2023, Senate Bill 2038 is when the state adopted to allow property owners to exit from the ETJ. Sorry. Yes, to exit from the ETJ. Before, when somebody annexed a property, the ETJ expanded. So then this law basically, property owners now were able to request to get out of the ETJ if it expanded into their property. So this now makes it more difficult for us to plan for those outlying areas if people start removing themselves from the ETJ, because it doesn't mean that we can just have that property as future city limits. And then we go to common types of zoning or rezoning applications. So we have comprehensive land use amendments. So a land use amendment will come before you if there is an inconsistency between what the zoning request is and what the land use says. So in the UDC, they have the option to amend the land use. So that way, if you want to approve it, you can, but this kind of gives you that discretionary piece of, oh, well, the land use doesn't match, and we want that to stay neighborhood, or we don't want that to become industrial. So that kind of gives you that more regulatory approach like Mr. Bryson was talking about. And then the base zoning, so this is just a general zoning application. If they want to go from ag to C1, they would go through that normal zoning application process. If you're wanting to have more kind of negotiating power, then you have a planned unit development. So a PUD is going to be where you can create a specific ordinance with certain standards and lot standards, certain uses allowed, so you can kind of, I guess, provide a little more guidance on what you're wanting to see from a council and P&Z perspective, and so you can kind of work with the developer a little more in that aspect. And then conditional use permits, so this is going to be things like gas stations or kind of more nuisance types of properties that aren't necessarily allowed by right everywhere. There's also links in here, so you can go and click on those links to get to the applicable ordinances. And then we go into the Unified Development Code. So what is this? What's in it? All of those things. Basically, it includes the zoning ordinance, the subdivision ordinance, the sign ordinance. It was originally adopted in 2016, and it's had numerous updates to different sections of it. We use it every day because it regulates how we handle development. Staff references it all the time and reviews basically every request that comes in. Even just a general question or inquiry, we're probably referencing it. It's basically the main tool that we're using to regulate land development within the city. It applies to all development within the city limits or the ETJ. It provides procedures for development review, and then it's governed by multiple departments. There's also like other elements of it with stormwater, streets, drainage, like all of those items that you would think of when you look at a subdivision. And then we go into zoning and rezoning. So basically, this is kind of like a little overview of the steps and the application process. So the application submitted, staff reviews it. It'll go through multiple rounds of reviews before it comes before y'all, and then it would have notices mailed out. It would go to P&Z, and then it would go to council in most cases. Basically, zoning looks at the building size, the heights, the lot coverage, parking, landscaping, setbacks, making sure that there's enough room between other buildings. And so basically the zoning is going to be where the property owners kind of have to follow within certain guidelines and restrictions that are going to be allowed in that area or that zone. Then we go into the factors to consider. So consistency with the comprehensive plan is always the top kind of factor, and then goes into land use and development patterns within the area. So what is happening with other developments around it, and then the impact on adjacent properties, and then the vacancy or the current utilization of the site. So kind of looking at the highest and best use, alternatives, traffic and parking and infrastructure, consistency. So spot zoning is a big thing that we want to refrain from doing. It can get you into legal issues, lawsuits, that kind of thing. Basically, if you're looking at a property and there's residential all around it and they want to be industrial, then that would be considered spot zoning. And then looking at the health, safety, and general welfare of the community, that's what the statutory, I guess, enabling power that was set for zoning. Any questions before we go to subdivisions? I think we're over halfway through. So plating, so this is gonna be the least discretionary piece of the development process. Per state law, there's certain requirements that have to be met, and each subdivision has to follow the same general standards. And so, basically, this is all regulated in Chapter 212 of the local government code, and the plat map is going to include like the overall tract of land. It's going to have the boundaries, it's going to have an easement, it's going to have streets that are going to be dedicated, parkland dedication, the lot sizes, all of those items are going to be shown on that plat document. And then just a general overview of the application process. So they submit the application, staff reviews it, we make comments addressed, and then it goes to P&Z and council. And so basically, y'all have all seen, I think, many plats since y'all been on these boards, but it's gonna help make the transfer of property ownership between the parties, so the buyer and the seller, so that way it's clear saying what they're actually purchasing, because a survey does not actually identify everything that is encompassed on that person's property. There's a lot of times encroachments that are missed, or items like property boundaries that may be crossing, or easements that may be there that are not even shown on the survey. So that kind of helps clean all of that stuff up, and it just helps make it more orderly for future property owners.
Question.
Yes.
And I know we might be going back just a little bit, and I apologize for that if it is, but there was part of the application you had to determine how many LUEs you wanted.
Yes. So
And so like in the subdivision and the plating, they're gonna put in for so many LUEs, where when they start and they misfigured, and they have extra LUEs that they can't use, nor will they use, do they revert back to the city, or can they sell them?
So they would revert back to the city, from my understanding, in the utility service agreement.
Just in new clauses we adding to the LUEs, they are localized, so they cannot bounce them from one development to another one.
Okay.
Whatever excess they don't use, revert back to the city. They have to show significant progress in the development. If not, they're going to go back to ground zero and start the process again.
Very good, I'm glad to hear that.
So common types of plating, so we have preliminary plats, which is gonna be the baseline plat that they would submit. Basically, this is gonna show the phasing of the development, if it's a larger project, and then you would go into the final plat, so then that would be the more details. So they would submit all their construction and engineering plans, and then this is gonna be the final document that shows all of those items that they're dedicating or gonna be subdividing. There's plat waivers, so if there's a deviation from design standards, that would be something that would be an additional review, and it would come before y'all separately as a separate action item to take on that application. And then administrative plats, so a minor plat is gonna be anything that's 4 or fewer lots, and then no dedication of any land or infrastructure. That's just an administrative review. And then amending plats would be something that's gonna correct like a lot line or to clean up any properties that have, not been properly platted or deeded in the past. And then, other types of plats would be like a plat vacation, so if they are completely removing an existing subdivision and then gonna propose something else, or they just don't want that subdivision to ever be built there like it was platted 20 years ago. And then a replat, so if there's anything that, somebody wants to combine like two lots together, that would be a replat application. So that's kind of the things that we do.
Does the engineering firm that we have look at the plats,
Yes.
the topographical and the
Yes.
flow of the land and for drainage?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Asking, clarifying.
Yes.
Yeah, we actually sent, not a plat, but a site plan back.
Site plan.
We sent a site plan back recently multiple times to the developer because we were not satisfied with what they had, proposed for their drainage
Okay.
on that lot.
And so like, as a developer, I know we have, one subdivision that has, some English drains put in that the drainage is going into the properties behind it,
French drains?
French drain, there you go.
Yeah.
And we
So-
don't get back into something like that.
We do not, that's a civil matter between the two property
Okay.
owners, correct?
But when we approve the plat, are we looking at that?
We're looking at drainage. What happened on that lot is I believe one of the property owners had a French drain put in, independent of anything to do with the city. And so at that point, that's not something that we would get involved in. But yes, we do look at the drainage overall for the whole subdivision. We look at how it flows. If they're gonna do underground, storm drain, if it's gonna sheet flow on the streets into the detention pond, all of that gets looked at.
And then we go into land use and zoning versus subdivision. So, like I mentioned before, land use and zoning is more discretionary. The approval criteria is used for consideration and guidance when deciding, land use decisions. And then reasonably determinations can be made, for making a recommendation. Whereas a subdivision application, so a plat is gonna be non-discretionary per local government code, and then approval criteria must be met. So if there's something in a plat application that you think doesn't meet the requirements, you would have to specify what code requirement is not being met. But like we said, we would not bring anything that's not meeting the code to y'all, so you should never have to deal with that.
If we do, it may be under a conditional approval, which you guys have seen before, okay?
And then the shot clock bill. So in 2019, House Bill 3167, this was the kind of, I guess, main caveat that created a tizzy for a lot of development within the cities, because it made it to where we had 30 days to go through those plat applications, and it wasn't really clear when they initially adopted it on the actual review timeline, and if you could bring forward a application that was not meeting all the requirements. So that's where there was a confusion there for a few years, and then in 2023, the state went through and amended that, and so they cleaned it up a little bit. So the 30-day review doesn't apply to these types of plans or these types of plans, but it still applies to plats. And then you have to have that submittal calendar in place. You have to have newspaper notice for requirements to any kind of like roadway construction specification or level of service, drainage standards, things like that. And then going through like plat required only if there's public dedication, filing date defined. You have to have a basically development manual in place to help developers understand the approval timeframes that are in place, what they have to comply with, all of the regulations and everything. So we're updating that right now. We found a copy of it from when it was originally adopted. And so we're cleaning that up and getting that fixed up for developers to have, so it's easier for them to understand the process. And then the other elements of that change was it may not require dedication of land within a subdivision for a future street or alley that is not intended to by the owner of the tract or included in the city's capital improvement plan. And then you may not refuse the review / approval of a plat for the recordation or failure to identify a roadway corridor unless the corridor is part of an agreement with TxDOT and the county between which the city is located. So you gotta have more specifications in place, and specific conditions that you're including in your language. So this is an example of a plat. So, this kind of helps kind of guide you on when you're looking at a plat document, looking at the legend, the map, the vicinity map, the plat notes, title block, all of the information that's there, the lots, yeah. And then this one's gonna be the, legal description, all the certifications that are required, notary, engineer, surveyor certifications, showing that everything's been stamped and approved. And then,
The physical copy of the plat is like a 2x3 sheet, they're pretty large, but to get them in front of you guys.
so then we're gonna go into site development, so looking at infrastructure and construction plans, so the purpose is to provide engineered details for all public infrastructure, so we have those, infrastructure design standards that we adopted, back in December. And so those are now in place for drainage, utilities, streets, so that is gonna be what a lot of these plans are gonna have to reference now, versus another city. So we just wanna, I guess, have the overarching goal of reliable service and public health protection for all of our infrastructure. So plans are going to include water, wastewater, roadways, sidewalks, stormwater, easements, and right-of-way improvements. And then, obviously, we're going to review with city standards. It's going to have to make sure that constructible and long-term maintenance requirements are in there as far as how the infrastructure is built. And then coordinating with the existing systems. So this is where Stephen comes into a lot of our discussions when we get into water and wastewater, and then streets and drainage with lane. And then the site development plans, this is going to include the specific site. So this is going to be like your site plan, and what all is going to be included on that item is going to be like your detention pond, your building footprint, your parking, your landscaping, where the existing infrastructure is at for public infrastructure, and then how it's going to connect for the private lines to get to those facilities that are being built. It's also going to include like lighting, parking buffers, and then like fire access and your grading and all of that kind of stuff. And then we go into on-site versus off-site improvements. So on-site improvements are going to be on your site plans, your site development plans. Basically anything that's located in that property boundary, so that's going to be your privately maintained items. And then you have off-site improvements that are going to address in the construction plans or the engineering documents with the plat application. And so that's going to be everything that's outside of those development boundaries. Obviously easements can cross through development, but that would be something that's dedicated on that plat to show that it's a public access easement or a public utility easement. And this is going to show you kind of the inside of the engineering plan document. So this is going to be a profile of a plan. So you're going to get to, you get to look at the profile, and then you also have the section drawing up top. And then when you look at the next one, this one shows you all of the overall site plan and all the items that are in there. And then infrastructure and construction closeout. So whenever we get to this point of the development process, we have the construction process, which obviously takes months and months and months. There's inspections that are required throughout that process from an engineering standpoint, water and wastewater standpoint, streets and drainage standpoint. And so all of those items are being looked at and addressed. And then as they get to that closeout process and we get closer to the acceptance of that infrastructure, we're gonna have a final inspection and a final walkthrough. We're gonna make sure that they address all those outstanding items if there are any. And then as-built drawings will have to be submitted to the city so that we have a record of what's actually on the site. And then the infrastructure is gonna be accepted, once it meets all of the city standards. And then we have a warranty and bonding requirement. So if, the project is, or when the project is gonna get to that point of being accepted, there's usually a maintenance bond that's in place for a period of a year. Some cities have expanded that to be like 2 years, just because infrastructure does not always hold up with weather and other things, especially construction, concrete trucks and other construction vehicles. That weight does not always end well for the infrastructure if it's not. Well, it's always built to city standards, but you never know what's gonna happen from a weather standpoint and just natural element standpoint. Obviously there's complications and things that can arise no matter what, but, that's gonna kind of be the thing that helps keep the infrastructure in place to where we can verify that it is gonna withstand a more long-term aspect. So, we would like to look at expanding that timeline from a year to make it like 2 years, so then that way we can have more of the oversight of it before we accept it completely. And then building permits. So, the purpose of permitting is going to be to protect public health, safety, and welfare, and ensure constructions of all structures are being met. So, building, fire, plumbing, electrical, mechanical, energy codes, all of those things are what we look at from a building permit standpoint. That's kind of the final piece of the development process. So we have a plan review process, and then once they go through that plan review set with Bureau Veritas, then they will have the permit be issued. And if there's any like infrastructure elements that might come up with that, we would address that during that plan review process. So if they need to tap or if they're needing access, if there's not an ingress egress to the street, then they would address that at that time. And then during permit issuance, so they would go through a round of inspections after that, and Bureau Veritas would complete those inspections. And then if there's anything like infrastructure that needs to be addressed, Stephen and Lane would go out and do their inspections accordingly. And then following all those inspections being complete, then we would have the fire marshal go out and he would do the certificate of occupancy inspection to make sure that it meets all of the safety aspects. And then the CO would be issued after that, and then that would be when the building is able to be occupied. And that is, I think, everything for us. For development services.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very thorough.
Thank you.
We got
Fire away, ma'am.
Take a test afterwards.
We're gonna take a 5-minute break, so everybody take.
Yeah.
I told this one's longer, so.
This
I
is
was
longer?
I'm gonna try to, but I talk fast.
I'm gonna take 5 minutes.
This time we're gonna take a 5-minute break.
Okay, so I'm Christina Demers, for any of y'all who don't know who I am, I'm serve as your assistant city attorney, and you're gonna ask me to talk about some planning and zoning and annexation for tonight's meeting. So I'm gonna go over the concepts, procedures, and specifically the consent agenda portions of your agendas. And so, what is planning and zoning commission? Some of this is gonna overlap with course, but try to keep it more legal based. It is created by Texas law under the Texas Local Government Code, appointed by City Council. You're responsible for your zoning districts, boundaries, regulations, and also you'll be responsible when it comes up, reviewing your comprehensive plan as well. General Code of Ordinances, 5 members are appointed by City Council for staggered 2-year terms, can be removed by City Council without cause. Your specific powers and duties are set forth in section 1.06.067, but you hopefully already know what you're generally responsible for, so we won't speed through that. So zoning, the basics.
Bam.
Hey, Tony, 15 minutes, I'm trying. Zoning, what is it? It's the division of a city or area into districts and the prescription and application of different land uses within each district. And it's an exercise of the police power of the city, allowing it to regulate the rights of a private individual for the good of the community. Brief history, like I said, it is a valid exercise of the police power to protect the community's health, safety, and welfare. The U.S. Supreme Court decided that in Village of Euclid versus Angelo Realty back in 1926. They passed this, legislature passed the Standard Zoning Enabling Act in 1926 to allow zoning to take place. Texas Supreme Court held that all property is subject to the police power, and a proper zoning regulation is not a taking for which compensation must be paid. It is governed by 211, and that particular case has been referenced over 400 plus times. That's just some lawyer facts for information. So again, it's to promote the health, safety. Purpose of it is to promote the public health, safety, morals, general welfare, and protecting and preserving places and areas of historical, cultural, or architectural significance and importance. What can you regulate? Height, number of stories, size of buildings and other structures, percentages of a lot that may be occupied, size of your yards, courts, other open spaces, population density, location and use of buildings, other structures, and land for business, industrial, residential, or other purposes, and areas of some type of architectural building significance. You can also regulate construction, reconstruction, alteration, or raising of buildings. So you can divide the city, just the basics, you divide the municipality into districts. The number, shape, and size, regulations must be uniform for each class or kind of building in a district. Your regulations can vary from district to district, and regulations must be adopted with reasonable consideration, among other things, for the character of each district and its peculiar suitability for particular uses, with a view of conserving the value of buildings and encouraging the most appropriate use of land in the municipality. Talked about you can have planned development districts or planned, those change city to city. So so your PUDs here, you can also have conditional use permits. There you go. So Forrest kind of already went over comprehensive plans, so we won't talk about that, other than to say your zoning regulations must be adopted in accordance with your comprehensive plan and designed to meet those criteria, which basically are your police power elements. Less congestion in the streets, secure safety from fire, panic, and other dangers, promote health and general welfare, provide adequate light and air, prevent overcrowding, avoid undue concentration of the population, and facilitate adequate provision of transportation, water, sewers, schools, parks, and other public requirements. So, procedures. Getting into the nitty-gritty. You're required to give notice. It has to be published in the newspaper of general circulation and website before the 15th day before the date of the hearing for a zoning or rezoning. You have to mail it or electronically deliver it to property owners as indicated by the most recently approved municipal tax roll. And if there's any newly annexed areas since that date, within 200 feet of the property on which the change in the classification is proposed. It's mailed or electronically delivered written notice also is required for any proposed adoption or change to a zoning regulation or boundary under which a current conforming use of a property would become non-conforming if that passes. And there's an additional provision in the local government code that sets out the required language for that type of change, something that would take a current conforming use to non-conforming. That's probably more important for staff, but those requirements need to be met. In 2025, legislature allowed for electronic delivered notice, but the recipient has to opt in. So you can't just send it to them via email. They have to actually choose to receive electronic notice.
Question.
Yes, sir.
What documentation does the city have that shows that has been done?
Should be published in the newspaper, and they should maintain some type of copy of the mail
Who
notice.
publishes it? The developer?
No,
Or the
city.
city? Okay, and then who mails out the information
City.
to landowners? The
City,
city?
yes.
What documentation do we have to protect the city?
They should be keeping a copy of it. If they send it certified, they should have that. It's not a requirement to send it certified,
Right.
but if that's a way of tracking it,
But we don't have any way of tracking it.
unless you send it. But
a copy of it here, does it say they got it or has it?
Well, but there's not a requirement to mail it certified. You just have to mail it. So the assumption is, once it's in the mail, they're gonna receive it. That's why you have the dual notice of the mailed and, published, and also has to be on the website, sorry, thank you. Has to be on the website, because now a lot of people, look there. So it's paper, website, and mailed.
Nothing's been given to the owner of the property that sent that notice. There's nothing on our end, or the city's end, to document that owner of that property
Received it.
has been notified.
Received it.
I
If
mean,
they,
Are we responsible for that?
no, you're responsible for sending out the notice and documenting that you sent it. I can't control what happens in the mail. If you want to ensure delivery, then yes, you would have to do certified mail, and that would be a cost, taken.
So
Yvonne?
what we're doing now is saving a copy of the Excel spreadsheet that shows all of the notices or all of the mailing addresses, and we're also saving a copy of the letters themselves that were mailed out.
That's because we didn't have any.
Okay, I am very aware.
I just
Yes.
wanted, because it doesn't state anything up there in this procedure that we have to have.
Right, and this is taken
So-
directly from the local government code, so
But
there's
we
no
can, but
requirement.
the city can amend it. Or
You
add
can
to it.
adopt your own policy,
That's correct.
yes.
Okay.
So-
They might want to consider it.
And I'm gonna go back a little bit, and the reason I capitalized municipal tax roll is because that is just that, the municipal tax roll. If you send notices, like let's say it's somebody's wanting to, they've just recently annexed, now they're wanting to rezone, so you have some adjacent property that's still actually ETJ, you're not required to send them a notice. You can send them a courtesy notice, but you're only required to send to the, property owners adjacent within 200 feet that are on the municipal tax roll. And that comes into play also with protest.
I have a question too, sorry,
Yes,
about the electronic delivery.
yes.
How do you verify that it is indeed the person that is requesting that? How do you prove? Because anybody can just go on a
Right.
website these days.
It is, I think it's on good faith that the person opting in is the person who they say they are. There's nothing in the government code that says that you have to verify. It just says they have to opt in. So even if you had their email address, you couldn't email it to them. They have to choose that
They
type
can
of.
make up an email. I'm just trying to save
They,
or think about a person that could potentially take advantage of something like that.
they could, and there's some provisions that the city has to offer that as well, like they have the capability to send it electronically.
No,
Right.
I'm good with that. It's just being able to prove that the person on the other end is the one that said, hey, I am the one that is, I want it this way.
If
Because what happens if the person didn't do it and then comes to the city and says, where was my notification?
I think if the city wanted to adopt if they wanted to go the route of allowing citizens to opt in for electronic emails, they could ask for some type of copy of a driver's license or some type of personal
I would think it
identification.
would just be better for the
Right.
city, I'm not saying not to have it, but just to have a better way of verifying that
And
request.
that is actually a good point, and it may change come 2027. Because this is
Just
one of
a-
those,
a
no, it's just one
suggestion.
of those brand new things that, you know,
Yeah.
when they enact it, they sometimes don't think all those things through, and then they get comments from council members and city managers that these are our issues, and so, you know, if it becomes an issue,
But how are you going to defend it?
I'm gonna defend you that this person said they were Joe Smith, and they opted in for electronic, and this is the email they gave us, and I can show you I sent that notice to that email.
And that's going to clear it.
Based off the way it's written right now in the statute, yes. So that's your notice requirements. A public hearing is all it is required, and then when the P and Z has its hearing, it makes a recommendation, essentially based off its vote, to council. And that final report generally, most cities, my experience, is prepared by staff based off of your vote presented to council. So legislative action, basically a simple majority vote approves a zoning change. And they can be protested. Basically, if at least 20% of an area covered by the proposed change disapproves of it, disagrees, or at least 20% of an area within 200 feet of the proposed change, says they disagree, or a very convoluted provision that says 60% of the area within 200 feet of proposed change if it affects residential development and it has the effect of allowing additional commercial and industrial uses. And the uses limited is a very complicated thing that I don't know that you're gonna see in Gerald right now, possibly, but it is in there as a potential protest to a zoning change. You're mostly gonna see the first two options. And if those 20% thresholds are met, that requires a supermajority of council members to approve the proposed change. So at least 3/4 of council members would be required. If the situation in that third bullet point ever shows up, it only requires a majority of all council members, which I found odd, but that is how the statute is written.
And that's a supermajority vote of all council members regardless of whether they're present or absent at the meeting. And I only point that out because we did have that situation in the previous city that I worked for. We had a council member that was vacant, so the applicant thought that did not count towards the supermajority vote. It's all the council members that are elected, not just who's present at that particular meeting.
Correct. So making the zoning decision actually has constitutional implications. So your 14th Amendment is your due process provision. Basically requires that you treat all people equally as they come before you. So basically you look at the use, not necessarily the person before you. And that also they can't be deprived of a property right as a result of zoning process. That's where your notice and hearing requirements come from. So that when do they have a property interest? If you are a property owner of the property being rezoned, or if you own property within 200 feet being rezoned, you are deemed to have a property interest in the governmental action. Home rule cities do have some flexibility to provide different rules. What notice is required, we've talked about that. Written notice 10 days prior is deemed adequate. What hearing is required? Basically, P&Z has to have at least one public hearing required for approval. And council cannot hold its public hearing until it receives a recommendation or a final report from P&Z. And usually those are all coordinated with staff and preparing the agenda. So Fifth Amendment is basically can't take property without just compensation. So two types of taking claims: have actual physical taking of private property, which is eminent domain, and the other is a diminution in the development rights on a property by virtue of some regulatory action taken by the city. We call this inverse condemnation. And that's generally what you will see in cases if somebody challenges a zoning regulation, is that by the action of the city, you've essentially taken my property from me and you need to pay me. Also First Amendment rights, this kind of gets into obviously freedom of speech, freedom of religion, peaceably assemble. So land use regulations will usually fall under freedom of speech and freedom of religion. Quick example, this was a sign ordinance famous from Reed v. Town of Gilbert, where the city passed an ordinance regulating posting of signs in the towns, and they created different categories based on the types of signs: ideological, political, directional. So basically, ordinance applied different restrictions to each category. This was struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court. Basically, this is where they established content neutral, basically saying to regulate, basically a violation, the ordinance violated their the freedom of religion, and it was not, didn't pass strict scrutiny. There was not a compelling government interest, and it was not narrowly tailored. So basically, that's where content neutral comes from, and that would be something that P&Z would see with changes to zoning ordinances, and then council would see it on the final approval of those ordinances. Another illustration out of Dallas, just now 10 years ago, there's an Orthodox Jewish congregation that met in a home. Several people there, obviously, in the neighborhood actually had deed restrictions limiting the use of the property to single family. Neighbors who cited some problems with traffic and parking. Congregation said that this, they were allowed to do this under the Texas Religious Freedom Restoration Act and the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act. The court refused to allow enforcement of the deed restrictions, thus allowing the church to continue to meet. So those are just some examples of how the Constitution plays into zoning. Some additional factors. Always remember, is it generally, you're gonna start with, is it in compliance with your comprehensive plan? However, there is a case that says that while, Weatherford v. City of San Marcos, while the city's zoning regulations must be adopted in accordance with a comprehensive plan, it does not follow that the comp plan dictates that the city council must approve every rezoning application in accordance with the comp plan. So it does allow for some flexibility. So yes, the default is approved in accordance with your comp plan, but you're not meant to make your comp plan your actual zoning regulations. It's a guidebook. So basically, rule of thumb, if the requested land use is shown on the comp plan, city's decision on the zoning case is discretionary. If the requested use is not, you should probably amend it or amend the plan to reflect it if you think it's actually good use, or just deny the request. Secondary effects of a proposed use. So basically, ultimately, at the bottom, consider the use, not the user. So decisions on zoning applications should be made based on an analysis of the impact of the proposed use on the neighborhood and on the city as a whole. How does it impact traffic, noise, light, air, crime? And does it allow for adequate provision of city services? And so those are things to take into account. Reasonable use. So it has to, any zoning regulation that the city puts in place has to allow property owner reasonable use of their property. So that's a question. Does the proposed regulation allow the property owner reasonable use of the property? Frequently asked questions. Can the area of land subject to a zoning change be increased? No. This goes back to what you put in the paper and sent it to the property owners. The public notice contains a description of the property for which a zoning change is sought, but there would not be adequate notice of a change in an increased area. Can it be reduced? Yes, because you can go smaller than what you advertised for.
Time set.
I think so.
There it is.
So, can't go bigger, can go smaller. That's kind of the gist of that. Can the area of land subject to a zoning change be zoned to a more intense use than was advertised? No. So again, it would not be adequate notice to those people. So if somebody was asking for, if they were zoned ag, wanted to go to residential use between 10,000 square feet lots, the governing body or city council could not zone it to lots that are 5,000 square feet, since there was not adequate public notice for that. Again, you can do the opposite. It can be less intense. So if somebody came to council and the commission wanting to go from ag to residential and they're asking for 5,000 square foot lots, you could actually approve 10,000 square foot lots if discussions led to that decision. What is spot zoning? It's rezoning of a property that benefits a specific tract of land with a use classification that is less restrictive than provided by the original zoning ordinance. One theory is that when a city council departs from its comp plan and rezones, especially to benefit a small tract, it violates the state law requirement that zoning be in accordance with the comp plan. Essentially, it's illegal because it's arbitrary. At the very last page of y'all's handout's a pretty good, that Forrest provided that summarizes the Texas Seminole case on this Farby Tippett, has a good question and answer on spot zoning. Contract zoning, it's also illegal. That's where a property owner or developer agrees to develop or use the property in a certain way in exchange for receiving a particular zoning classification. Contract zoning involves an enforceable promise on the part of either the owners or the zoning authority to rezone it. This is an area of law, like if there was some type of lawsuit and you wanted to settle, you have to be very careful. If you went into some type of written agreement, if there was some type of litigation over this. Also, you have to be careful if you do development agreements that you're not agreeing to a specific zoning class in that development agreement. Conditional zoning is the granting of a zoning change by a governing body which is subject to agreed upon specific conditions which limit permitted uses in a zoning district. Typical scenario is that you secure a property agreement to limit the use of the subject property to particular use or uses, or to subject the tract to certain restrictions as a precondition to zoning. So unlike contract zoning, under conditional zoning, the zoning authority requires an owner to perform some future act in order to receive zoning, but does not enter into an enforceable agreement promising such zoning. I know that's confusing, but it's best to have them follow your zoning provisions. does an applicant have the right to withdraw a zoning application for which notice has been given? Technically, no. Unless municipal ordinance specifically provides the right for the applicant to withdraw, P&Z and city council have jurisdiction to rezone the property. If the property owner protests, a supermajority vote is required. If they ask y'all to table and y'all agree to do it, that's fine, but they don't have a unilateral right unless the ordinance allows it or y'all agree to do it, basically. Or prior to notice, like if they give, before you publish notice, then, and they say, well, wait, we're not quite ready, then you withdraw. So plating, Forrest went over this a lot. There's a super old subdivision right there. Basically, all it is a division of a tract of land into 2 or more parts to lay out lots, or to lay out your streets, alleys, squares, parks, or other parts to be dedicated to the city. So what is a plat? Local government code has a very generic definition. It just says a plat is a preliminary plat, a final plat, and a replat. But the actual terms are actually not defined by statute, which is kind of interesting. So I just kind of generically refer to all types of plats as a plat under here. So it has to be, a plat has to be described by meets and bounds. It has to locate the subdivision with respect to a corner of that survey, state the dimensions of the subdivision, it has to be signed and acknowledged, be filed and recorded with the county clerk of the county where the tract is located per the recording requirements and property code, section 12.002. We've already kind of talked about the shot clock, so I'm not going to go back into that. Approval standards, as Forrest indicated, there's limited flexibility in your plat approvals. Annexation and disannexation. So annexation is governed by Chapter 43, the local government code in 2019 was the last round of major reforms to annexation, except in very limited circumstances. All annexation is now voluntary. Probably not going to change anytime soon. So you follow the procedures set forth in subchapter C3, annexation on area of request of the owners. Basically, I've always just generically called them C3 annexations. So basically, a municipality can annex an area if each owner of land in that area requests it. Usually it's that one landowner. The request of the city should be in writing, include the meets and bounds of the areas to be annexed and signed by all owners. And prior to annexing, the governing body, typically through staff, must first negotiate and enter into a written agreement with those owners for the provision of municipal services in the area. The agreement must include a list of each service the municipality will provide on the effective date of the annexation and a schedule that includes the period within which the municipality will provide each service that is not provided on the effective date of the annexation. You are not required to provide a service that's not included in the agreement. Just my recommendation would be to develop a standard form for the municipal services agreement that you present to the applicant. And just as a reminder, P&Z does not hear annexation cases, those go straight to council. One public hearing is required prior to adopting an ordinance or annexing an area. During the public hearing, the council must provide persons interested in the annexation opportunity to be heard. And you may adopt an ordinance annexing an area. Basically, that means you can do it in the same meeting. Under the old, more complicated rules, you would have a hearing and then adopt the ordinance. There were some more convoluted rules to it, but this streamlines it. You can have your hearing and then adopt your ordinance in the same meeting. Notice requirements are very similar to for rezone. Post on the city's website and publish in a newspaper of general circulation in the city and in the area proposed for annexation. Typically the same paper, but there may be an instance where those are actually different. It has to be published in the paper at least once on or after the 20th day, but before the 10th day before the day of the hearing, and posted on the website the 20th day, but before the 10th day before the date of the hearing, and must remain posted until the date of the hearing. You don't have to mail individual notices in annexation cases. So annexation, this is kind of where some of notice requirements come into play. Under local government code 43.016, it provides the city the authority to annex areas that qualify basically for ag exemptions, wildlife exemptions under the Texas tax code. So just always remember to check the status of an area to be annexed to see if this provision actually applies. So if that provision does apply, if it is something that is ag exempt, or wildlife use. I don't know that we have a lot of timber land use, but maybe. If it is applicable, that area is eligible to be the subject of a development agreement under Local Government Code Chapter 212. And like I said, it is appraised for the ad valorem tax purposes. Basically, you have to tell that property owner, do you want a development agreement? But it's really for the purpose of not annexing, which is kind of a backwards way, but that's how they did the statute. So you cannot annex it until you've made that offer and they've rejected it. Or if they accept it, they typically accept it to stay ag. It's kind of a weird thing, but it's required by the statute. And, because basically it's like, why are they voluntarily annexing if they want to do a development agreement to not annex? But that's what the state has decided to require cities to do. I think it's because of the animosity towards annexation. They want to give a property owner every opportunity to say, no, we don't want to come in. That's my interpretation of why they did it. Just my opinion for what it's worth. So at the time the city makes that required offer for a development agreement, they also have to make some disclosures in writing. Those are listed there, that they're not required to enter into the agreement, the authority under which the city may annex the land, plain language description of the annexation procedures, whether the procedures require the landowner's consent, and a statement regarding the municipality's waiver of immunity from suit. Any questions on annexation? Trying to go back. Okay. So disannexation for a general law city. This is actually different than what Forrest talked about for under Chapter 42, which is release of ETJ. So this applies to somebody who is actually in city limits and they want to not be in city limits. So your main reason is going to be for failure to provide services. So that municipal services plan, if for some reason the city did not provide it, then that property owner can petition the city to release them from the city limits. They can also ask to disannex by petition or an election, and there's some procedures there for that to happen. And also disannexation of the sparsely populated area. I'm not going to go into a lot of details on that. If it comes up, it's there in your packets if you want to read it. But just remember, there is a difference between what I'm going to call true disannexation. You're already in city limits and want to get out, and versus you just want to be released from the ETJ. So we already kind of know. I'm not going to go through all that. Consent agenda. Okay. What that is the grouping of items considered to be routine and non-controversial, usually included but not limited to minutes, contract approvals or renewals, budget amendments, routine real estate matters such as land and easement purchases and leases. It's approved in a single motion with no discussion. A council member can request an item to be removed for discussion. Those full items are then discussed and voted on individually. The purpose of the consent agenda is to streamline meetings by quickly handling routine items and allow council to focus on its more complex issues. Okay, we don't need to go into that. So, any questions on use of the consent agenda? Any questions on anything? I tried, how fast was I?
Pretty good.
I tried to talk, I got a second.
Good job. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, we have one more discussion item. 4.1, discussion consideration of city council meeting dates and times.
Oh, we're on the discussion. This is the last section, huh?
Dates, times.
Oh, we're discussing it?
Yeah, pretty much what we're looking is, the staff is looking direction as to the new schedule for council meetings. It was brought to my attention that the present council meeting days is in conflict with some of the council members' prior commitments. So we're going to see if we can find another day that we can set another day and time that we can all meet.
And you brought up Wednesdays, and we said that was
Brother,
easy.
there's
That
no Wednesday, that was
conflicted.
an oversight for me. I sent an email asking the consensus, and the majority came with third Wednesday of the month, and that was I know I said from my part, that was the day of the EDC meeting.
Right.
However, you guys can pick a day and then every other body will have to adjust.
Seeing that that one was a conflict, was the fourth Wednesday a conflict?
Second Wednesday is the EDC, I'm sorry.
What?
Thank you.
You said it was the third, the second Wednesday?
The second Wednesday is the EDC meeting, that's the day it was selected, but
The third Wednesday also has a conflict.
they all said third Wednesday also have, yeah.
So Wednesday they're out.
The first, maybe not.
First and fourth?
The first, yeah.
Well, I'm not even gonna say why I can't come to Wednesdays, cause that will just irritate everybody, but.
I do the first Wednesday.
First and fourth.
Every 6 weeks, and I have to make those appointments in advance. Monday.
Tanya.
Fourth Wednesday?
Since you weren't here at the last discussion, my concern was Wednesdays are traditionally reserved for religious purposes. And as I told Ray, within just a minute searching every church in this area that started at 6:30 or 7 has a religious service or a Bible study, etc. That's my concern on Wednesdays.
And they could possibly decrease public attendance
Leaving our meeting on Tuesday.
if they wanted.
One of
You know, I
the,
built my schedule around Tuesday.
I've always built mine
One
around
of our, I
Tuesdays.
mean, right now, I think the biggest, one of our council members' jobs is in conflict.
For the whole school year or just in the basketball season?
Which basketball runs from
Now till March.
December till March, so 4 months of the year, a quarter.
Well.
Not to mention,
Did he know that prior to running? Not to be mean, but did he know that prior to running?
Sure.
We're just discussing, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So in a sense though, that's the only day he's not coaching, so really, I don't,
So is it every Tuesday, all Tuesdays?
games are Tuesday, Friday.
What does Thursday look like?
Tournament, Friday, Saturday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Basketball tournament.
what does Thursdays look like in the fall?
Track meets,
Tracking.
Friday, Saturday.
Thursday, Tuesday, football.
So,
Right.
yeah,
Do it.
I mean, Monday, Wednesday, it's not for avoid more, Wednesday's gonna have one.
I'm not getting.
Right, and I don't know, that wouldn't be an issue with you.
they probably wouldn't be,
Yeah.
it's becoming one. So Wednesday, the first Wednesday of the month really is the only,
First or fourth. EDC is second, and the third is, school board.
Which EDC can change their meeting. if they need be.
I can't do this first Wednesday.
I'm open, anything.
I can do the second or the fourth Wednesday, if we move to Wednesday.
I just can't do third.
so, I mean,
Can't you just do it for February, March? And then go back and then decide next year?
he coaches on.
You have the 3 days for posting. Day of posting doesn't count, Saturdays doesn't count, holidays don't count, and most holidays have Fridays and Mondays. So,
So any consideration to Thursdays?
He
That's-
won't be
that's up to
available
you.
there, he's the only one that has the conflict, I mean, the major conflict. I don't know what his schedule is.
In the fall, I will be a conflict with football. And in the spring for probably,
Did he say what day of the week he's requesting?
he didn't,
Have you talked to him about anything?
that I'm aware.
Oh, I haven't, did he say Wednesdays was the only time he wasn't coaching?
no, the only time that we have a conflict, that he had a conflict was on the Tuesday, but I haven't had a response from him.
Oh, we need to find out what, yeah, we need to find out what days he is available, and then build around that maybe?
In the schedule on the webpage,
It is, but I'm not gonna speak for it outside of
Yeah, I would think
basketball.
that
I
you
mean,
would
there's
need to
football,
speak
there's
for
there's
yourself.
spring sports. I just know that,
Changes based on season.
right, of course.
Yeah, so we need to ask Drew what days he's not coaching, absolutely. Before we can, I mean, we're not
I
taking
mean,
action on it tonight anyway, but.
I know the concern about Wednesday, but lotteries that they have to be open to the public, and the council is the one making, it's our city business.
Separate church and state.
We'll pray before the meeting, so
Well, we
it's not a
do.
separation.
It really is looking honestly.
I agree.
I mean, obviously,
Could we ask the council members that are here what conflicts they may have during the week, so that when we do talk to the one who's absent, we can, okay. What conflicts might you?
I don't have a conflict, I've already stated about for the public.
Yes, I know what
That's
you're.
why- that's
yes,
where I'm at.
Yeah, okay,
But I personally don't, at this moment, don't have a
Okay.
conflict.
okay.
I don't have a conflict.
Okay. None,
Not for me.
first Wednesdays for you, first and third, okay. Okay.
I'm good with
And that's the only two conflicts, like during the whole week that you will have? Okay.
And we're talking about changing the time too, to 6:30?
If we're ready, the mayor says 6:30 would be a good time to start.
Is that a conflict for you?
It can be a conflict for me. I work out of town, so.
If we moved it to 6:30, it would be, okay,
Yeah,
so
it's
it's
cut it
7
close.
o'clock.
It's cut it close.
Keep it at 7.
Yeah, we'll reach out to.
Sounds good. Anything else?
Just to be clear, as of now, the next council meeting will be for the February on the Tuesday. We didn't take any action.
So if you're taking action, it's still regular.
Still regular.
So it will be the regular Tuesday on February, the next council meeting.
All right, so no further business. We're adjourned at 9:20 p.m.